310 milliseconds. Man, that is pretty damn fast. Cool stuff. 300 milliseconds was the time it took between the time the air went across the mass airflow sensor until the time the air fuel ratio sensor picked it up. That is pretty damn cool. I was inspired by Frank Massey in a video he did with Pico Automotive, where he was using a low current clamp and voltage checking the exact same thing that I'm getting ready to show you. I'm not sure the cars he works on. They are definitely not Nissan vehicles. We, meaning Nissan, we use a different style sensor than he was actually testing. So after I got my hands on this low current clamp, I wanted to do this testing on my own. I preach to anyone, get your scope, pull it out, and use it. So I practice what I preach. What I found was really interesting. I'm using my two guinea pigs are a 23 Altima naturally aspirated 2.5 direct injected motor. The car has like 9 miles on it. The second vehicle I'm using is a 2023 Nissan Frontier 3.8 liter naturally aspirated, also direct injected. This car has like 26 miles on it. Very, very, very cool stuff that I found, especially with the way the mass airflow sensor works on the Frontier truck. I literally had to check my setup at least 3 times because it fooled me. But it had to have been right because the truck's brand new. I ended up getting it all figured out, and what the scope was telling me was the absolute truth. I was just not believing it. But I want to share that with you. And after we get through all that, I'm also experimenting with intake pulls versus mass airflow signals, trying to figure out a way to kind of do a relative test using the mass airflow, say cranking, back probing a sensor and checking the pulls as the mass airflow sees it. I'm comparing it with the actual pulls of the engine with a WPS. I haven't quite got all the information I need to make a decision on how I want to view this information, but I'm at least going to share what I've got with you, and I'm going to show you good versus bad. The bad's obviously going to be a Chrysler Hemi with a cam problem. We all know about that. And the good's going to be a Nissan Altima. But I can see where the two relate. Like I said, it doesn't matter whether it's a Nissan or a Chrysler or a Ford. The style testing applies as long as it's a 4-stroke engine, which pretty much all of them on the road today are. So thanks to the new subscribers, I'm going to play you a couple of in-shop videos showing kind of what I'm doing, and then we're going to go over some captures, and hopefully we learn something. Like I said, I'm laying a foundation for what I'm feeling like are going to be problems in the future with these direct injected engines. Trying to get the crystal ball out and see a little bit. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, but at least I want to be prepared when this bad dude is sitting in my bay trying to eat my lunch. So thank you guys for watching, subscribing, and hope you enjoy the video. Alright, throttle position, mass airflow, battery ground. I've got a micro current clamp on the AF sensor here, and I'm also checking voltage and currents on the same wire. Put you on the screen. Got a trigger set up. I'm going to go flat foot it. We're going to check that out. Pretty cool. All right, first up to bat is the 23 Nissan Altima. So before I get started in what all this mess is, I want you guys to check this out. So right in here on this red trace is where I snap the throttle. And what I want to do is I want to zoom in real quick. And we're just going to take a measurement. I want you to remember this because it's going to be interesting later when I get into the frontier. So I'm going to go rising edge. I'm going to do 1 cycle to rising edge. So let's just remember down here in this corner, let's just remember 8,000 hertz or 8 kilohertz. Okay, 8 kilohertz. Now back to this. So what do I got going on here? What I've got is a mess. So let's start filtering some of this mess out. Let's go to channel A, and we're going to filter A. And let's go to B. We'll leave B alone. Let's go to C. I want to filter C. And let's just go ahead and filter D while we're at it. Now the software is going to hate me for all this, but we must do it. So what do I have? Channel A is voltage at the signal wire on the air fuel ratio sensor. This is a 4-wire sensor. It's made by Denso. And the reason I did this was to prove a point. And I'll have another video showing the point I'm proving, but at least you can see it here. Channel B, this is the mass airflow sensor. It's a digital mass airflow, which we're going to make a math channel so we can see it better. Channel C, the guest of honor. This is a low current clamp. The part number is K110. I bought this thing used about 6 months ago from a fellow Auto Nerd member. Thank you, Tom. The clamp works great. And then channel D, this is my throttle position. I kind of tried to point all that out in a little video. So, as I mentioned, Frank Massey from Pico Automotive, he did this test on some sort of a car. I don't know what the hell it was, a Beamer, a Skoda, a Fiat. I don't know what they work on over there. But he had mentioned the time between when the mass airflow sees the air to the change. On that particular video, the car was like 275 milliseconds. He said he prefers things around 200. I said, well, I've got to start checking my own cars, the cars I see every day. And this car had like 6 or 9 miles on it. So I'm going to presume this is good. So let me get my glasses on here where I can see. And let's check this thing out. So this is a digital mass airflow. So what I need to do is I need to make a math channel so I can look at it like an analog. So I'm going to go to math channels, and I'm simply just going to do frequency B because I'm on channel B. And what you can do is if you go up here, you can edit these things. And I'm going to make sure that I'm measuring the hertz correctly. Like 0 is going to be basically the car's off. 15,000 would be topping out. I'm going to change that to 10,000 because I've snap throttled enough of these to know that it's not going to go over 10, and that'll just give me better definition. So let's do that, and let's do that, and then we're just going to turn this channel on and hit OK. And we're going to check our channels. B2. Okay, there it is. So basically, this is digital. This is the same reading, but it makes it look like an analog. It's easier for us to look at. I'm going to turn channel B off. Now, here we go. So remember, the gold is throttle position. So this is actually when the throttle opened. I thought this was kind of neat because you can compare all these things at the exact same time while reading everything live. You don't have to rely on the scan tool possibly giving you misinformation, because you know that's like a hot topic these days, is misinformation. But what I think is kind of neat is as soon as I told you my software hates this, as soon as this throttle starts opening, that air is moving across that mass airflow. I mean, it's pretty daggone instant. So the way I have this clamp oriented, if the mixture goes rich, the signal goes up. If the mixture goes lean, the signal goes down. So we know when you first punch a throttle, you get a big gulp of air. So I'm going to put a cursor right, I'm just going to do it right there. It's kind of when the throttle opens, you can see my first big gulp, and then as the engine winds up, you know, you start getting a little more air through the motor. Well, right in here on this green trace, we're talking 348 milliseconds. We'll just call it 350. So less than a half a second from the time that throttle blade opens, that air rushes past that mass airflow and it registers it. That fuel has been delivered in the combustion chamber, has combusted, and has been pushed out into the exhaust, and the air-fuel ratio sensor is seeing it. 348 milliseconds. Now, to me, that is just impressive as hell. I mean, that is fast. This thing is adjusting this fuel less than half a second from a drastic change. I mean, we went from idling to wide open throttle. I mean, we went from idle, wide open throttle, pretty much back to idle. And that dude picked this thing up quick. This car was completely warm. So everything was up to temperature. And, you know, everybody says you can't really check the voltage to get accurate live readings on these 4-wires. And I agree with that. I mean, you can see the very subtle change here. I don't know how much diagnostic information you can get out of that. At this point, if I didn't have this low ant clamp, I mean, you're forced just to use the scan tool, which I've done for many years. Like I said, I just recently got this clamp. So I'm learning how to use it, and on good cars, so I have a good foundation as to hopefully when I see bad cars. So what does this tell us? Like Frank's video, if this thing can make this sort of a change in that little bit of a time, my fuel system is good. This test is not showing me what's wrong with the car, but it is telling me a hell of a lot of things that are right with the car, so I can focus elsewhere. You know, if I had a low power complaint or something like that, this test just ruled out my fuel system. I can focus now on maybe clogged exhaust or carboned up valves, or, you know, dragging brake rotors. Who knows? But I know that the fuel system is good. Now, something that Mr. Massey didn't talk about in his video that I think can be some good information, and it's something that I've seen, is leaky fuel injectors. Because you figure when you snap this throttle, this thing goes from probably 600 psi maybe up to 2000 psi. And let's just say, for instance, you have an injector that at 2000 psi it can't seal. Even if electrically it's cut off, mechanically it can't seal, so it's still spraying fuel. Well, notice here, once I let out of the throttle, which is the gold here, I'm off the gas right here, the air's slowing way down, and within, you know, 400 milliseconds or so, it actually made a change. It actually started changing here. Between here and here, it made a small change, but really when the injector shut off, it really went lean here. Well, let's just say, for instance, we've got one of those pesky cylinder imbalance codes. It's really not a misfire, it's really not lean, it's not rich, it's just an imbalance. Well, could you use this test to maybe rule out a leaking injector under high pressure? Let's say, for instance, you have a car that if you unplug the solenoid on the side of the pump, it defaults to high pressure. And then let's say you can look at this distance here, or maybe even how fast it goes lean. And let's say you unplug each injector one at a time, or you disable it with the scan tool. And then you get the one that really is not doing much changing. Say it's still kind of out in this way, where the rest of them dropped or basically you're playing the odd man out game. I don't know, just thinking out loud, maybe you could be able to determine possibly a leaking injector by how fast the reaction from the mass air or the air fuel ratio sensor is. I don't know. It kind of reminds me of doing cylinder balance tests, looking for RPM change. I think there's some value in this test, I guess is what I'm saying. And I'm kind of trying to lay some groundwork for myself and for any of those that are interested in what kind of maybe numbers to look at. Like I said, this engine's not turbocharged. I have not got a turbo one to try this test on yet. So I'm basically going to go with, I'm going to say 300 to 400 milliseconds on the snap before I'm looking for a change. And then when I basically let off of it, I'm looking, 300 to 400 milliseconds for this thing to start shooting lean. I think that's a fair assessment of this fuel system, being this car is like 6 miles on it. I'm going to show you next the Frontier. It's a V6. I'm testing bank 1. Bank 2 was the exact same. I'm just not going to go over the whole capture. That could be a little more beneficial because you could test bank against bank, as long as you felt like you had one good bank. And also remember that mass airflow sensor was 8,000 hertz or 8K at snap. Wait till you see the truck. So let me get that thing going here. Hang on. All right, so here's the 2023 Frontier truck. So as before, I want to show you this. This is the mass airflow. This is the little current clamp. We're on bank 1. So right in here, I snapped the throttle. So let's just measure that like we did the Altima. You can already see some difference. So let's go from falling edge down to falling edge. And look at that. 1500 hertz or 1.5K. The Ultimate was 8,000. This kind of blew my mind a little bit. Now over here it's idling. So let's look over here real quick. Same measurement. We'll go from right there roughly to right there. 2.6. So this mass airflow reads backwards. The more air, the slower the cycle time. And it kind of wigged me out the first time I saw it. I thought I had my math channel wrong. I checked all my connections because every mass airflow I've ever tested, as the air flows faster, the hertz go up. Well, this one works backwards. And I did verify it with the service manual and the scan tool. Kind of crazy. I don't know why they're doing that, but they are. So let's go ahead and set the math channel up. We're on channel A. And we're just going to do basically frequency A right there. We're just going to turn it on. Pretty much the same setup as I had before. Where'd it go? Okay, except as you see, let me go ahead and turn A off so we can see that better. Now this was kind of freaky. But the math channel is showing the frequency getting less with more airflow. Strange. Let's go ahead and filter this. So there again, the little current clamp when it goes up is rich and down is lean, and our mass airflow works ass backwards. But the information's still there. So let's see here. When I first crack open the throttle, now I didn't do the throttle position and the voltage on this one. Just to save time. And from the time the throttle opened or the air starts moving till I get movement in the air fuel ratio sensor, 240. So this one's actually faster than the Altima. Why? I don't know. Intake design, exhaust design. I just don't know. And then from the time we let out we'll call it there, and then we start getting a change lane. We're 227. So this one's very fast. This is bank 1. Bank 2 was very, very similar. So once again, kind of laying some groundwork. So when I start seeing these things, and I want to do this very quick, I'm telling you, the setup on this is fast. You just take and pull the sheath back, put the amp clamp around one of the signal wires, and then back probe the mass airflow, get the car warm, snap the throttle, and you've just learned a hell of a lot about this fuel system. I mean, I bet I could do this test faster than the Consult boots up. And I already know if I see these numbers, my fuel system is on point. Look somewhere else. And the only way I'm knowing this is dragging this scope out and testing this stuff and presenting it to you guys out there. And if anybody has this style clamp, they are very useful for airbag testing and also the new style active speed sensors, which wheel speed sensors, which I'll get into that. I didn't want to make this video about the tool itself, but mainly the testing. I've still got to do a V8, and I want to get a turbo, like a new Rogue with the 3-cylinder. I've yet to get that, so I may add to this video or do a part 2 as I get more testing. What I'm going to do after this is I'm going to put a small video up where I'm actually showing the voltmeter, which I'm back probed one of the signal wires, as they call it, and the amp clamp's on the exact same wire. And I'm going to show you that live in the shop as I'm basically pulling a vacuum line on and off the engine, and I'm doing it on this vehicle. I didn't save that capture, but you'll be able to see it and you'll be able to see how fast the current changes and how drastic the current changes versus the voltage on the voltmeter. Everybody says the only way to test these live is with current, and I do believe that. And just seeing it for myself reassures that that is absolutely correct. So the little video I'm going to show is basically current versus voltage on this truck while I'm creating a massive vacuum leak. And then after that little video, I want to go over a few WPS pressure transducer things I'm working on, where I'm using intake pulls and comparing it to the mass airflow readings. I'm not sure exactly what I'm seeing yet, but I'm working out the details. And then I'll show you kind of a known bad with some timing of the intake versus known good with the timing of the intake. So check out the little video, and then we'll get into some WPS stuff. Thanks for watching this far. So what I've got here, the red trace is I'm back probed the mass airflow sensor. The green trace is my WPS 500 Pico pressure transducer, and the blue trace is just an ignition sync. I'm working on a 2013 Altima. It's a 4-cylinder, naturally aspirated. My ultimate goal here is this. You know how we do relative compression check? You know, we're checking mechanical soundness by using an electrical signal. What I'm trying to do is see if it's even possible if I can back probe the mass airflow and crank an engine, and by the voltage change, if that can tell me if each cylinder is getting the same amount of pull, meaning is the same amount of air getting in each cylinder. The reason I'm doing this is I'm trying to lay some groundwork for being able to diagnose carbon buildup in engines. Now this is a tune port engine, and that's kind of where I'm starting my experimentation, because the valves are really clean on this engine, and I'm slowly working into more and more and dirtier intake valves to kind of see if I can start picking up subtle differences by using the mass airflow. The WPS transducer will tell you everything, but not everybody has one. And like I said, this experimenting is just in its infancy, and I just want to share with what I've got, and then as I learn more, I'm going to share more. Right now I do have some captures where I've created leaks and things like that. I'm not going to really go into that yet, because I'm not sure if what I'm seeing is actual leakage, or if am I seeing engine speed change, which means alternator speed change, which means voltage change. That'll obviously affect the mass airflow. So still working out the details, but this is what I've got so far. Kind of food for thought. Anybody has any input on this, please let me know. So I've zoomed in vertically on the intake pull by 20, and I've zoomed in on the mass airflow by 10. And let me just try that again. But you can see the ups and downs. This engine's running. This is not a cranking capture. This is a running capture. The nice thing about the WPS, this is absolute. This is not a first look sensor, a piezo sensor. If you measure it, that's exactly what the vacuum is. The way this sensor is set up is if there is more vacuum in the intake, the signal is lower, and as vacuum decreases in the intake, the signal goes high. I'm thinking just like a mass airflow sensor, usually as voltage is higher, you have more flow, and if voltage is lower, you have less flow. Now, one thing I do notice, first off, it's not uniform with the actual intake pulls. I'm not sure of that or why of that. But one thing is, everything's pretty uniform across the bottom, which may be useful information. The timing might not be right, but the voltage drops the same. On this car, there's nothing wrong with it, so I would expect to see that. One nice thing we can do is we can look at timing, intake timing, intake valve opening timing. Like if we suspected a tight valve or a loose valve or a worn cam lobe, which I'll show you, and it's pretty easily done. So let's put a ruler at 720, and let's put a ruler at 0, and this is a 4-cylinder engine. So as we would expect, every time a valve opens, basically when the valve opens, you've just made the intake manifold bigger. So you've increased volume, which means you've decreased pressure. So as that valve opens, pressure goes up, and as the piston comes down, it pulls it back down. Pressure goes up, pulls it back down. Well, you can see every 180 degrees, we have a change. So it's safe to say that the timing of this engine is good, which it is, because it's a good engine. You can check the vacuum here, because it is a real reading. It's 19.88 inches of mercury, and you can see the difference between the ups and the downs is a little over say 3/4 of an inch of mercury from the time the valves open till the intake pull. Now I'm off here, but if we slide everything over, this is using the mass airflow now, we can kind of see a resemblance of everything being even. So I want to feel like that I can use that information if I didn't want to go as far as getting this out. But I'm not ready to call it yet, because I'm still testing. So right now this is kind of beta testing, I guess. But the WPS transducer is an awesome device. I literally got off the phone with Auto Nerds yesterday, being June 21st, and I was told they have plenty in stock. I asked about inventory on the Pico scopes. They have ruggedized Pico scopes in stock, and they have enough stuff to put together kits, and they can do anything you need as far as putting a kit together for these WPS transducers. As usual, there is a link in my description box and on my homepage, so if there's anything you need regarding Pico or supplies, please use the link. Get in touch with those guys. It helps them, and it helps me a lot. So with that being said, this is good. Everything is symmetrical. So let's take a quick peek at one that's bad. Recent files. Now this is a Hemi. This is a Chrysler Hemi with a worn cam lobe, a worn intake cam lobe. So how would we tell that? Let's go ahead and put our cursors back at 720. And let's do a quick vertical zoom. How you do that is you click on, we're on the red trace is what I want to vertically zoom. So let's click on that. Let's scale it up. I said up. And then as it goes up, you may have to chase it down, which you can use this, or you could come over here and actually slide it up and down. And we need some rulers. So this is a V8. Let me get that pop up off the screen. So let's put us out 8 rulers. We know a V8 fires every 90 degrees. So this is an intake pull. And as I look across here, I see that all the intake pulls are pretty much at the peak. Now this is a piezo sensor that I'm using here. Except for that one. Notice how late that is? Compared to that one, compared to that one, compared to that one, compared to that one. That was cylinder number 5. It had a worn cam lobe. So if you have a worn cam lobe, your valve opens late. The WPS transducer would have shown the exact same thing. It's just, for some reason, I think I may have had it in the exhaust, because the WPS will show you absolute pressure, but if you hit the zoom buttons, it acts just like a piezo style pressure sensor like this. I usually use it in the exhaust, in the tailpipe, because it's a lot more sensitive. But yeah, that's just real quick diagnosis. Just simply laying these rulers out, looking at each intake pull as they happen, and then you can physically see that one's late. You throw a overlay up. There's the firing order. You can look at the ID chart, and we can just put it there, and we can put it, come on, right there. I hope you guys can see this. Sometimes the overlay does not show up, but trust me, there's an overlay chart here, and number 5 cylinder is right there. So if you watch my video Hemi versus Pico, this is on that, but it kind of relates to my WPS experiment. So I hope that overlay shows up and you guys can see that. So this is the end of the video, kind of a experimental video. If you guys sat through the whole thing, thank you very much. You are real troopers. Remember, if you need anything Pico, check out Auto Nerds. They have inventory as of yesterday, June 21st, 2023. Brian told me that they can't keep the site updated fast enough because things change really quick. They have stuff 1 minute, they don't have stuff the next. But as of about 24 hours ago, they had stuff in stock. So give them guys a shout. Thank you guys so much for liking and subscribing, and I'm going to try to keep the videos coming. We're a little slow at the shop, which is kind of a good thing. If I don't have a lot to do, that means the cars are getting fixed and my customers are happy. That gives me more time to play and do some experiment. I mean, did I say play? I mean experiment and learn things. Have a good one, guys.